Right, welcome to another one of GingerGM's videos. Haven't done one for a while. I'm going to have a look at a game I had in the local league against Danny King. I was black in this game. It's quite an interesting opening, so I thought it was worth mentioning. You'll see from the report we've got quite a lively team with a good bunch of people playing. We've got myself on board 1, Blair Connell on board 2, who's done this report. On board 3 we had Mark Rich, who's rapidly improving, a strong player, and yeah, the team's very good. We have Peter Ackley on board 4, who's famous for his drinking antics, should I say. And then we have Neville Chan, who's basically one of the founders of the Drunken Knights, I believe, on board 5. And our captain Gary O'Grady normally sits in the bar, watches with a pint or two in his hand. So it's a good little team, but it's quite an interesting match, this one. We were playing at the venue, which is the Star Pub, and sometimes it gets a little bit noisy in there because we're in a room basically in the garden where you have the outside where you get lots of people. Maybe, you know, if they've had a couple, they can be a bit loud. So as Blair noted, we had one person walk into the venue this tournament, which is quite amusing, or should I say match. He walked in and he started very drunkenly philosophising about why chess was irrelevant because there's no more knights and kings about, very loudly, and asking what we're all doing. And this is quite amusing because it was after about half an hour of play. Eventually he left, but I suppose this is one of the things you get when you play down a pub. But definitely the most wittiest comment of the night was Mark Rich's comment after he had left, explaining to Guildford that he was our board 1 last year, so that went down quite well. Anyway, let's go on to the game I had. So Danny played e4. I thought I'd try out c5. I think I've had a couple of Frenches against him before. Knight f3, d6. I had no idea what he was going to play, but he went c3 here. Now this is a bit of a slow way to play, but there's nothing wrong with the system. I mean, obviously white just wants to play d4 later on, gaining a good centre. So knight to f6 is worth playing because now if d4, black might be able to capture on e4 here, winning the pawn. Now my opponent played h3. Now, I mean, I don't know the theory of this. I mean, I guess h3 is a useful move to stop something like bishop g4, but it also does become a bit of a target later on, which you'll see in a couple of moves. I actually aim to go straight for. So I played knight bd7 now. I can't take on e4 immediately because there's a nasty queen to a4 check, so I've got to avoid that. So I went h3, knight bd7, threatening to capture on e4, and now my opponent played bishop to d3. So it looks a bit funny, the bishop here, but white's planning to play bishop c2 and d4. So now I played b6. Now it might have been worth playing e6 here, but I was a bit worried about bishop c2 immediately, and d4 is quite hard to stop. The reason behind playing b6 is if white plays bishop to c2 after b6, well, then black can play bishop to b7, and again you're making it harder for white to play d4 because of the e4 pawn. And if something like queen e2, then I was thinking I was going to play rook to c8 here, and again d4 doesn't work due to some tactical threats down the c file. So this is basically why b6 is quite a useful move. My opponent now castled. Now in this position, have a guess if you want. Maybe you know the way I play a little bit by now. So black to play, what do I move in this position? Well, I mean, bishop to b7 obviously looks like the most sensible move here. My first thought obviously was g5. G5 I don't think quite works because it just takes it, and if rook g8, maybe just something like f4 here, h6, the knight just pops back here, and well, I haven't really got enough for the pawn. So what else can I try here? Well, my next move made perfect sense to me. I don't know if it's good or not, but it seemed a very interesting idea. Well, I went rook to g8 in this position. So rook to g8, just for the idea of going g5, g4, trying to take advantage of this move h3 that Danny's played earlier on. So, I mean, this looked like an interesting way to try to mess things up at an early stage, try to make the position a bit more interesting and get some dynamic play along the g file. So my opponent went bishop c2, continue a central play, g5, d4. So, you know, you're supposed to meet a wing attack with a central attack, exactly what Danny's doing here. G4 takes, knight takes, and I was quite happy in my position here because I thought, well, this g5 is a bit dangerous. I've got my knight on g4, maybe a bit dangerous as well. So I thought this was quite interesting. I mean, the move I was most concerned about in this position was e5. I thought, well, white should be trying to open up the centre here to take advantage of my king being in the centre. I don't know what's going on after something like d takes. I mean, now this is very risky if he takes on h7, but maybe you can get away with it. Bishop f5, and okay, the position's a bit of a mess here, and I'm not sure. I don't know. I mean, I guess black's got decent enough counterplay. Maybe you can just play something like knight to h6, and if bishop takes, and if takes here, something like e6, so we get a chance. And okay, a pawn down, but I should have very good attacking chances here, because if I can get my queen over to h7 or over here, I mean, and bishop's coming to b7 as well. Oh, well, I suppose he goes bishop to e4, but I don't know, it's just a very unclear position. But anyway, after knight g4, Danny played rook to e1. I played e5, which stops the e pawn from moving, but it also weakens f5 and d5. After the game, Danny said that he was a bit more worried about e6, and coming to think of it, this move makes a lot more sense now, and I think I agree with him, because I'm covering b5 and f5 here, and my plan is just to play queen, same as I did in the game, but it's a lot harder for him to generate some squares for his pieces. Anyway, e5, knight d2, so now I brought my queen over. This looked like the right plan. Just bring them all over to the king, and hopefully checkmate will come along soon. Knight to f1, queen g6. So I wanted to stop knight to g3, which is not possible now because the knight takes f2. And I also wanted to stop knight to e3. I've got to try to stop this knight coming from the game, because knight takes e3. Threatening mate is winning as well. So queen g6 looked very sensible. Now my opponent played a good move. He went knight to h4 here, so he's coming into this square on f5. Queen h5, knight to f5, and now I went bishop to a6. So my general plan here is to play bishop takes knight on f1, followed by queen down there somewhere, checkmating. My opponent played f3, and this does force my knight away now. Now this is probably the critical point. This is where I had the biggest think. After f3, I had a choice between playing knight to f6 or knight to h6. I went knight to f6, which looks safer, but maybe I should have tried knight to h6. I mean, one possible line here I was calculating was something like bishop takes h6, and now bishop takes f1, so I get rid of this knight, which is quite a useful piece because it was ready to come out to g3 and stuff. And then if rook takes f1, bishop takes h6, and I think I quite like black's position here. I mean, because he's played the move f3, my bishop has potential to come to f4, and I've got some attacking chances. I mean, it's very risky for him now to take on d6. I mean, I'll just go king to f8, and if knight back, bishop to f4, and this looks like a very big attacking position for me now. I mean, you can't try to run away king f2, because rook g2 is going to be pretty terminal for him, with queen to h2 mate coming on. So maybe this knight to h6 is a better move. I mean, I went knight to f6, but then the position quickly petered out after bishop d3, bishop to b7. I wanted to control the dark squares, sorry, the light squares around my queen side here, as you can see from my diagrams, a6, b7, c6. I want to just castle. This is why I decided not to swap bishops. I was a bit worried about if I swap bishops off something like a4 here, and then it looks like my queen side is very weak. So at least keeping the bishops on controls the light squares, but it does make my bishop very bad as well. So double-edged. Queen e2, a6, again the philosophy of trying to hold the light squares on the queen side, stopping him coming in anywhere. d5, and now queen to g6. My idea was to go knight to h5 and then into g3 or f4, and here a draw was basically agreed after knight to h4, queen to h5, knight to f5, queen to g6, and etc, etc. Now I don't know, Danny reckoned after the game g3 might have been okay for him. I mean, I think this is, I mean, it's okay. I don't know if white's better here, to be honest, because I feel like I'm the one who might get my attack in first, maybe along the sort of G and H file, but it would have been very double-edged or something like knight H5, queen H2. I mean, I'm quite happy playing this kind of position anyway. Possibly he could have played it, but you know, I don't know, not sure. I mean, another move he can try is, well, another move I can try, I was thinking to play on was B5, but I thought that my opponent just goes B3, stopping C4, with a plan of going A4, and he's going to open up the queen side, and this can only help white, so I didn't want to commit myself to B5. I was also thinking about king to D8 here, the idea of putting it on C7, but I was kind of worried that at some point he might play B4, and he might be able to open up the B file, and again, I think I was just sort of walking into something. So I think a draw is a fair result here. There's not really much either of us can do to improve the positioning of our pieces, and you know, it's quite an interesting game. So fair enough for a draw, really. So now that Blair had to win the final game to draw the match, and unfortunately he got in a bit of time trouble. But we can have a look at that game below. Okay, thanks for watching that. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave any comments.